welcome to the video. Today I'm going to do something a bit different. I'm going to share with you the albums that I've been listening to during the last week, week 5, 2025. So I'm not going to do this every week, but every now and again, if I've had a substantial listening session and there are some really good albums to recommend, I'm going to do it. So here's the first in what may become a series. So, what have I been listening to last week? Well, the first one is a stinker, and I bought it at the Moseley Record Fair a couple of months ago, and it was brand new. It was in the box for £10, and it was a double 45 RPM album, and it's by Daryl Hall and John Oates, and it's Marigold Sky. Now, I do like Daryl Hall. I mean, I like Hall and Oates. I've got the greatest hits, Rock and Roll Part 2, whatever it calls. What was it called again? Doesn't really matter. From the 1980s. And I've got some of the 70s albums as well. And I do like Daryl Hall's YouTube channel where he has musical ensembles and they do covers of some great tracks. Looks a whole lot of fun, very, very accomplished. But somehow, and I think this might be because this album, I think, was originally recorded in the 1990s and has had a vinyl pressing fairly recently. This album sounds so out of time, so dated. And like I say, I've got a bit of time for Hall & Oates, but this one, in my view, is a stinker. Somebody I've been hoovering up a lot of albums in the last 2 or 3 years, and that's PJ Harvey and Her. Now this album here, it's more of the same really. I mean, if you know PJ Harvey, you know what you're getting. Have we got a date on here? God, 2004. My goodness. So I've been buying the editions that she's been putting out of her demo versions for each album, and they're all great. She's such a great songwriter. But she has that abrasiveness that means that you just can't ignore the music when it's on. You have to listen to it. So yeah, another good one from PJ. Band of Horses, Mirage Rock, alternative country, Americana if you like. Shades of Crosby, Stills and Nash. But yeah, good album. Yeah, what you'd expect perhaps. The Road by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis on one of their soundtracks. I'm not a huge fan of their soundtracks. I love them when they're working together on Nick Cave's music. But this is dark, and it's interestingly, this is on it's a lovely pressing, by the way. It's silent, which is kind of surprising given the color of it. But it's kind of like got this grey, sepia toned vinyl with kind of splatter. It's really, really good. Very impressed with that album. As I say, appropriately dark. The next one is from an artist that I've been buying records since the 1970s. Most of us probably have, but he still comes up with surprises. And this is yet another live album from Neil Young. This with Promise of the Real, and it's called Noise and Flowers. And it has some of the classics on here, which we keep hearing. What have we got? Helpless, Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere, Mr. Soul, Rockin' in the Free World, Comes a Time, From Hank to Hendrix, Are You Ready for the Country? Really good stuff. And the thing about what still gets me buying Neil Young live albums is that he has still got the ability to surprise us. So these are great versions. Very, very impressed with this. And that was Moseley Record Fair, £10 for a double album. Very happy with that. A band that I have not really followed over the years, but I did buy this album when it came out, and it's the Cocteau Twins and Treasure. Has this got a date on it? It's on 4 AD, so you can imagine it's got that kind of dreamy soundscape. 1984. recorded during August, September 1984, so maybe released in 1985. I can only take so much of the Cocteau Twins, to be honest, and this is my go-to album of theirs. And you've got those, that, as I say, that kind of dreamy soundscape. I think they use a drum machine, but it has that organic sound, but big sounding. So it's really banging drums, kind of really quite simple. But yeah, really good. Enjoyed that. As I maybe I've hinted, I can't take too much of Liz Fraser's voice in one go. So I get through 2/3 of the way through this album. I think, okay, that's enough, boy. That's enough. Although I do get to the end sometimes. More Bob Dylan Greatest Hits, the double Greatest Hits album, Volume 2. This doesn't have his early acoustic numbers on it. This is the stuff from probably about 67, 68 onwards. And it got loads of classic tracks on this one. I don't quite know what it is about this particular copy, but it sounds really thin. It's on the Red Label CBS. I keep going back to this album and I always leave dissatisfied. It doesn't do it for me. The individual albums, yeah, but this one, no. And, to be fair, I listened to all 10 sides of his box set Biograph just yesterday. And that has tracks from throughout his career and not in chronological order. And I think that might be a secret, really. It makes the album interesting, but not this one. Still, it's a big seller. Jazz, I've got a little bit of a relationship with jazz. I bought a lot of jazz in the 1990s in particular. And I'm always on the lookout for instrumentation that's a little bit out of the ordinary. So the standard piano, bass and drums, or sax, bass and drums only does so much for me. But I heard somebody recommended this artist, and I decided to buy the album, and that is Yusuf Lateef and Eastern Sounds. And what makes this interesting for me, it's a cheap reissue, by the way. It's on wax time, so it probably cost me about 12 quid. He plays tenor sax, but he also plays the oboe and the flute. And that makes sort of that Eastern feel here. And he's got piano, bass and drums in the quartet. But yeah, really good. Really like that. I like that so much, I actually bought a CD compilation, which is sitting down there, of several of his albums. The Best of Julie London got a spin this week. And I think that's probably about a dozen or so of some of the best album covers ever made. Less said about that, the better. The Mind Bomb. This was sitting in the shelves, been sitting there for a long while, and I gave it a good clean, and it sounds fantastic. And this album is the one that came after Infected, and it's notable for having Johnny Marr on guitar. And this has got, the famous tracks on this one are Armageddon Days Are Here, and The Beaten Generation. But The Violence of Truth is classic as well. Very political lyrics, but really good album. Very, very nice to get back into that one. Always been a fan of George Michael, and this is Listen Without Prejudice, his second solo album after Wham, and this is fabulous. Not as good in my judgment as the first one, but this is still great. Loved hearing that again, I always do. And finally, I've got one more. My favourite Leonard Cohen album, 10 New Songs. This is Sharon Robinson, who co-writes and produces the album, plays keyboards, loads of keyboard washes, but that deep voice of Leonard Cohen, in my judgment, the sweet spot in his catalogue where you get that perfect combination of kind of wisdom and musicality kind of blended together in this like godlike voice. It's great. I think his early stuff sounds really thin, and the very last stuff that was released posthumously, somehow his voice was not as good. This is the sweet spot anyway. I love this album. Anyway, one other, just bear with me a second. I was watching YouTube videos of a band that I used to follow in the 1970s, although I never saw them live, and a band called Wishbone Ash. And and just coincidentally, out of the blue, I got a message from a friend of mine who lives up in Cheshire, and he said, "Any of you guys want to come and see Wishbone Ash next September?" And I said, "Yeah." And again, coincidentally, because this came up at a really good price, I bought this, which is a 10 album box set called Living Proof. And it's live recordings 1976 to 1980. So anyway, cut long story short, various gigs here. So far so good. Haven't listened to it all yet. And a ticket for Wishbone Ash has been secured for this coming September. So I'm looking forward to that. So there you go. That's what I listened to in week 5 of 2025. I'll see you again. Bye for now.